what Bitcoin has done is it's woken people up to what fiat currencies are, to the pitfalls of them, to the pitfalls of what deficit spending is, and all of these. The reasons to buy Bitcoin are the same reasons to buy gold and silver. So let's say you start with $10,000 in Bitcoin, and every time it gets to 13,000, you take 3,000 off, you buy silver and gold with it. Every time you keep your exposure to Bitcoin, you take your profit, and it's like putting chips at the blackjack table in your pocket. So no matter what happens with the money on the table, when you get to the cage at the end of the night, you got a pocket full of chips. That's the idea, is to always take those profits out and methodically add it to something that is building wealth in a different asset class, but yet cut from the same cloth.
Hey everyone, welcome back to StockPulse. This guy needs no introduction. Welcome back, Andy. How are you?
Good to see you, my man. I appreciate it very much. I'm doing well. You are too. Thanks for inviting me.
Today, we've got fun news happening. We've been talking about this for months. If you guys have been following me at all, you know I've already talked to Andy about what's going on with the BRIC Nations. I'm going to sit right to it because you actually tweeted out this morning a retweet. Now, I don't remember exactly what it was from. I think it was from like Eric Young or something, but it was a list of the other nations that were joining. And this one hits home to me. Egypt is my family's heritage. I'm Egyptian. And now I'm noticing Egypt is joining BRICS. There's quite a rich heritage in the Middle East. And when I see this kind of stuff happening, we're talking not just like current political and economic shifts. We're talking about like historic biblical shifts in geopolitical warfare here. What's going on here with these additional 9 nations, especially when it comes to resources and the resources they develop, like all the Emirates? We're not just talking about the UAE. The Emirates are many nations, including Dubai, right? So what's going on here? How is this affecting us as the news comes out today?
You know, there's a lot of there's this group, this conglomerate of countries is being built upon mutual respect and benefit. You know, things like Saudi Arabia and Iran striking peace deals and building embassies in each other's countries. Saudi Arabia joining the new BRICS naval alliance along with Iran, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, India, Oman, Qatar. I mean, you're talking several countries in this group that have really never liked each other. Iran and Iraq building the first ever railway between the two countries. All of this being brokered by China. The same type of mutual benefit is going into the way that they are conducting themselves all around the Belt Road Initiative, or the infrastructure being built as part of this huge group of countries. In other words, they're building gold mines, oil refineries, bridges, railways, maritime channels, roads. They're helping these countries not only break free from the Western hegemony, but industrialize their country, bring their natural resources to the market to help enrich and build a middle class, to build prosperity, doing it under cooperation instead of coercion. And yeah, when you see countries like Saudi Arabia and Egypt, who are believed to be fully admitted to the BRICS, it's a big deal. These are both our allies, as was the United Arab Emirates, or is the United Arab Emirates, and Turkey, and all of these countries that are expressing interest in joining this new union. Yeah, I think they're choosing sides. And
Iran and Argentina.
Argentina, absolutely. Iran just became a full member of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. That is also an entity that Saudi Arabia applied for. It is the largest regional military and financial organization in the world. So these countries are finding mutual benefit in joining this union. They're finding safety in numbers, and they're doing it upon a cooperative rather than being coerced into doing it. The safety in numbers is the part that allows them, or gives them the liberty to take this very dangerous step, one that, you know, Muammar Gaddafi and Saddam Hussein took by saying they're going to sell their oil for gold or for euro. And you saw what happened to their regimes and to them personally. It's much harder to do that to these individual countries now that they are joining a union that represents not only the majority of human population, but also conceals two of the three largest nuclear arsenals in the world. They become very formidable very fast when you put all of these countries together.
So here's the funniest part too, is we're actually like missing a big portion. I think most people are missing like the big headline. I'm going to share a tweet that I saw today. Just in, Russia's president calls on BRICS to abandon the US dollar and settle trade in local currency. This is the narrative that I'm worried about here. It's not just that they've developed something that appears to be kind of actually beautiful in terms of community and cooperation and collaboration and resources, but what I'm really looking at here in turn is, what are they doing to drive the value out of the dollar as well? Because they're looking at not just jump from the dollar, but jump from the dollar to something. And what we're going to see here is a lot of gold-backed issues, gold-backed plays. And when you start looking at something like this, I think we've got a bigger issue coming here, which is not just the valuation of the BRICS currency, but the counteracting effect of the devaluation of the dollar.
Yeah, well, when you start to see transactions, you don't have to be a reserve currency to erode the value of the dollar's reserve status, because all of the transactions are being done in other currency. As an example, India just did a large deal for oil and paid in rupee. You have France, who did a massive liquid natural gas deal, one of the largest ever, with the United Arab Emirates, paid for it in yuan. You have Brazil, the second largest exporter of corn in the world, striking deals with China where they will trade in real and in yuan when they exchange commodities with one another. So you are seeing erosion in settlement currencies or in settlement transactions to be done in local currencies. This is not even talking about the upcoming or at soon to be BRICS settlement currency, which at some point could become a reserve currency simply by building a bond market. And we built our bond market in World War I based upon patriotism, support the war effort, buy war bonds. That's how it all started. Well, if you have what could amount to at some point here north of 40 countries who've already expressed interest, and some accounts say even as high as 60, they won't all be admitted yet, but this is a growing process. This has been going on for 17 years. This isn't just started out of nowhere. So you have a situation where patriotism and breaking free from the centuries-old Western hegemony would be something that I think would spur patriotism amongst those countries. But even if it's just a settlement currency, and ultimately, to your point, the Russian finance minister, Sergei Lavrov, something to that extent, has told us for over a year now that we would see a basket of commodities backing a new currency system. And what did they reclassify gold as? That being the Bank of International Settlements, the most powerful bank in the world. They reclassified gold as the world's other tier one reserve asset next to US dollars. So there's no question to me but that ultimately gold will play a pivotal role in backing a new system that lacks credibility, that lacks transparency. One of the big knocks against those countries is who's going to trust China, who's going to trust Russia, who's going to trust those countries. But that's where blockchain technology, distributed ledger technology, and gold using or some form of commoditized basket pegged to the distributed ledger, to a blockchain, to show the immutability, to show the veracity of whatever this new settlement currency becomes. That is the trust. That the glue is the gold. The rallying cry is breaking free from the Western hypocrisy, the Western hegemony, the sanctions, the freezing of the Forex reserves. All of those things are pushing these countries into making these declarations like Putin just did right there, break free of the Western settlement and settle with our own local currencies. And I think this is a trend that is now firmly in motion. And I don't think we've even begun to see the extent of what it will ultimately look like.
I love this topic because not only does, and you guys, if you guys are loving this conversation, please like, share, subscribe, get this out to your friends, and definitely don't forget to sign up for the Silver Symposium, where you're going to get to hear Andy, Economic Ninja, Joe Brown, Jack from Nobody Special, and many other great speakers who look and feel the same way about like this entire conversation as you guys feel. So come learn. I met Andy at the Silver Symposium last year. I've made a good friend for a long time time. And I'm telling you guys, if you show up, you'll make friends too. So as we continue this conversation, I just want to end with, I will give you the last final minute, but what I really am looking for is how can we understand what is happening geopolitically? And it's not, just what's happening there, but really bring that into our current market. So my last question that I want to bring to you before I give you the final word, and I ask everybody this on my show, right? Everyone that comes on, I'll ask them the same question. You're looking at 2025, Christmas of 2025. You got about a couple of years horizon, right? You get $10,000 and you can only put it in one basket: gold, silver, or Bitcoin.
That's a really tough question. I'm a metals guy. I understand what Bitcoin represents. I don't have a problem with it. I get it. I don't understand it quite the way that I do precious metals. So I'm going to sidestep the Bitcoin question, which I'm sure will do very well. I am not a Bitcoin hater, not at all. In fact, I've always believed that there's room in the room for both parties, that it doesn't have to be mutually exclusive of one another. It can be one, it can be the other, it can be both. And I think, that's the way it should be. But
it should be. I'd argue it should be.
Yeah, because they're both represent, in essence, somewhat of a similar thing. That is freedom outside the system. And, that's really the most important thing, breaking free from the matrix. When I look at the holistic picture, there's the lead economic advisor to the United States government right now is a man named Jared Bernstein. And Mr. Bernstein has written many articles. They've been picked up by the New York Times and by the Washington Post. The one that he gained the most notoriety from is called Dethrone King Dollar, where he advocates immediately for the dollar losing its world reserve status, that it is a privilege we can no longer afford due to the trade imbalances and distortions. And if you wanted to dethrone the dollar's world reserve status, the first thing you would do would be to weaponize the dollar, to confiscate the forex assets of Russia and to use it to rebuild the Ukraine. We're a country that went into Iraq under the guise of weapons of mass destruction. We didn't find any. Well, sorry, but it's okay. We're forgiven, right? Well, Iraq just made, for businesses, trading in dollars illegal, punishable by prison time and losing your business. They're not very appreciative of what we had done. And I say that to you very tongue in cheek. By the same token, the rest of the world looks at that and says, well, not only are they hypocritical, but if you fall on the wrong side of them, then you're going to be sanctioned and your assets frozen and you're kicked out of SWIFT. And so this is the rallying cry, or one of the rallying cries that is pushing everyone in this direction. And the second thing that you would do would be to antagonize or push away the linchpin of the dollar hegemony. That is the fact that since 1974, it is the protection of the Saudi kingdom that has given us the petrodollar. In other words, Saudi Arabia said, fine, for the protection, we will denominate through OPEC globally oil in dollars. And for really the better part of 50 years, every country in the world has had to stockpile dollars to own oil. It's created a synthetic demand for the dollar. And when we signed, or Biden signed an executive order, right when he took office, saying that by 2030 we'll be 50% green and by 2050, 85% green, he signaled to Saudi Arabia, hey, we don't need you anymore. We're going a different direction. So if you wanted to lose the world reserve status as the lead economic advisor that this country talks about, the first thing you do is weaponize the dollar. The second thing you do is push away Saudi Arabia, but it's bigger than that. Look what's happening inside this country. I'm a patriot. I grew up in this country, not wealthy. I started a company with my father in 1990 on a wing and a prayer. My dad's middle name is Miles. His best friend who lent us $60,000 to start the company, his middle name was Franklin. And we come from nothing, in a one-room office, borrowing money to start a company on a dream. And we recently eclipsed $9 billion in sales. So I want you to understand, by never having a customer complaint, mind you, that I love this country and everything it stands for. But when I look at it, I am more disturbed by what I see happening in this country than anything I see outside of it. It is very clear to me what we are doing outside the country, in my opinion, is preordained. This is what they want to do. They want to reset the system because we're 155 trillion in debt with 5 trillion in assets, of which 40% of that is student debt. The largest asset in this country is student debt. We are a banana republic at 130% GDP, debt to GDP. We are sailing in a sea of uncharted waters, and the final chapter is yet to be written. But I do believe if you are not a contrarian, you will be a victim. And the one common denominator that all three, gold, silver, and Bitcoin have, is a contrarian play. And I think you must look at the world in a different light right now, because what I see, not even with the mismanagement of the dollar and the world reserve status, if it were just that, I could deal with it. Americans do real well when their back is against the wall. We would have figured a way out of it. But when I see what they're doing to this country, to the judicial system, to law and order, to the way that we have to celebrate. I come from a world where my parents were hippies. I learned to respect everyone and everything. You know, you want to do drugs behind your door, do it. You want to, whoever you're with when your doors are closed, I don't care. What you dress up as, I don't care. But now we're forced to celebrate it. And this whole thing of erosion of the fabric of this country, law, order, the nuclear family, all of these things that we have to bow down to, it's eroding what this country stands for. And more than anything, it has eroded our ability to be united in a common cause. And that is to build back, or to do something great, to take back our country, our liberties, our freedoms. All of these things, the World War II vets, that era, well, they were all united and patriotic and believed in this country in a way that is lacking right now. And I'm concerned. I'm very afraid. I will tell you this. It doesn't matter what you're in. It doesn't matter if it's Bitcoin, if it's silver, it's gold. As long as it's not completely and totally in dollars, you have a leg up from everybody else. And I guess I'll leave it at that.
You literally hit on the crypto commandments. When I started this, I'm trying to figure out, what are my rules for crypto? Like, what are the things that foundationally drive me to Bitcoin? The rule one, crypto command number one, is the dollar is garbage. I just knew it. I learned it. It's not valuable. I learned what it wasn't. I learned about the Jekyll Island history. Crypto command number two, choose the freedom mindset. I believe in the ability of Satoshi's vision to transact without an inner party permission. I don't need a third party or a banking system to say, yes, you can interact with them and transfer funds. We don't have that. So when you talk about gold and silver, you hit on those two principles, which is why I think you're right. These two communities should be coming together, because we actually have something in common more valuable than actual money or value. It's this community that wants to protect our sovereignty, protect our values. When you look at a neighbor across the street, I like to say it like this. I've never met anyone in my community where if an old lady fell on the street, no one would pick her up. I don't know one person. It doesn't matter what color they are, what language they speak. You see her fall, every man should bend down and get on one knee and help her up. And I just think that that's what we all feel like. I just feel like they're putting they're just wedging everybody against each other. And the reality is, you said it right. I don't care what you do in your home. Just don't tell me what to do mine. And I definitely don't have to be happy that you do what you do. Just leave us alone, and everyone protect each other's liberties. Let's just have healthy kids, healthy families, ability to provide for our kids' needs with a shelter and food that's reliable, that's not going to kill them. Just give me something that I can trust to give me the basics that we need to survive. And what we're finding out is we can trust our fellow man that's right next door. Regardless of what they believe, we can still find common ground because we value freedom, we value sovereignty, and we value truth.
Yeah, well, the Communist Manifesto, step number one, divide and conquer. And that the divisiveness is awful. You used to not be defined by who you voted for in the election, and you are now. And that's right, the one common thread that we all should have in these communities, in the Bitcoin and the metals community, is that we're all really pushing back against the same thing. I guess the one piece where I think we might differ a little bit, and this is where I think if people took a step back and looked at it in a similar light, maybe there would be more unity amongst the two communities. And that is that, for me, gold and silver are wealth. They have outlived everything the world's ever thrown at it, from 2 world wars, German hyperinflation, the Great Depression, every pandemic, everything the world has ever thrown at it, and is still immutable wealth. And I think when people accumulate Bitcoin, I think the mentality, maybe I'm wrong, is to get wealthy. And I think that if you look at it as wealth outside the system, the same way you would gold and silver, then really it's just a different form of the same thing. And You know, when I sell gold and silver, I don't sell it to people to get wealthy. I sell it because it is wealth and that it has retained its value for over 5,000 years in every single circumstance. And
Yeah.
I think that's the way to look at all of these assets right now. You're not really, look, I boil it down to this. Before this is all said and done, Patrick, I honest to God believe that he or she who loses least wins. We're all going to get hit on this. If things collapse the way that I think they will, and I think the way they want them to incite the Great Reset, to level the playing field so most of the public who lost everything, remember, most of the debt's owed to us, says, fine, I'll take the CBDC as long as you're making me whole, I'll sign on the dotted line. There has to be an event that makes people want the CBDC. And I really do believe that that is what they are trying to orchestrate by culling of the banks, by fraying the world reserve status, the petro status, and dividing this country, who really doesn't have what it takes right now, I think, to be united, to push back against this. All they need to do is have that event, blow up the markets. And the best part about their plan, and look, when I saw Biden say it's Putin's inflation, I said, oh my God, there it is. Because inflation 100% of the time is a monetary event. It has nothing to do with the war in the Ukraine. It is a monetary event. It is an increase in the money supply. We printed more money in 4 years than in the history of the country preceding it. I'm like, they're looking for a villain. And so what better way to create the reset than by weaponizing the dollar, pushing away Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Arabia standing on a stage with the BRICS, the Belt Road, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, the Eurasian Economic Union, all of these countries. And by the way, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization and the Eurasian Economic Union are believed to be invited into the BRICS. We're going to find that out in the next.
So was Mexico. Did you hear about that?
Yes, and absolutely. And so
what if they put like a military base for one of their, like China puts a base in Mexico or Russia puts a funded.
Understand how Putin feels, because having NATO in Finland, in Poland, and in the Ukraine surrounding them, you might understand how he feels. The media does a very poor job of playing both sides. Yeah. The bottom line is simply this: if they were to move away from the dollar, it creates an event that none of us are prepared for. And so, yeah, I think that it's really never been more important, Patrick. It's never been more important to de-dollarize, to mitigate your exposure to the dollar. And don't look at any of these plays with the idea of getting wealthy. Look at it more along the lines of getting out of the way of what's coming at you. And if you don't see what's coming at you, like the majority of the public doesn't, you can't get out of the way and you get steamrolled. So I really do believe that our two communities really are, let's call it first cousins. And there's nothing wrong with respecting both sides of the equation. And,
I know for sure that that's true.
Dipping a toe in both sides too.
You know, when you look at it, I can't argue with you. You stated a fact. The fact is Bitcoin has only been around since 2009. So it hasn't run the time test. We don't know how it's going to do over time. But what we can tell is that historically, Bitcoin has outperformed every other asset class in history. Never in the history of the world have we had an asset class that has outperformed Bitcoin. And just as I told my silver, not to be able to make 30% on it, but to hedge against inflation, to keep my purchasing power, because I believe the dollar is not valuable. So put in something else. When you talk about the purchasing power of Bitcoin, I only see that Bitcoin supports that narrative ever since inception. Because if you look back at 2015, Bitcoin was not really very expensive, and silver was at what, $15? Today, you've got Bitcoin at $30,000 and silver at 19. So it actually only costs you 90,000 Satoshis today to buy an ounce of silver, when back in 2015, it took you almost 5 million Satoshis to get an ounce of silver. So at this point, you start looking at how much more silver can you buy with your Bitcoin. I'd argue that if you're a silver, bull, maybe one way to accumulate more silver is by understanding the economic cycle coming in 2025, saying, here's Bitcoin, time to go buy some silver, because I know that a 4-year cycle in Bitcoin and the supply decrease is coming is, again, using them as tools to help each other. You can stack more silver if you value silver in something that actually matters, and that's not dollars.
Yeah, you take your profits in Bitcoin. Let's say you start with $10,000 in Bitcoin, and every time it gets to 13,000, you take 3,000 off, you buy silver and gold with it. Every time you keep your exposure to Bitcoin, you take your profit, and it's like putting chips at the blackjack table in your pocket. So no matter what happens with the money on the table, when you get to the cage at the end of the night, you got a pocket full of chips. That's the idea, is to always take those profits out and methodically add it to something that is building wealth in a different asset class, but yet cut from the same cloth, at least in terms of ideology.
And what happens when Bitcoin tanks to $10,000 should that happen? Well, looks like you got a lot of silver to sell. You've stacked a little bit of that along the way. Time to buy some Bitcoin.
That's exactly right. Asset classes have cycles, and that's how you take advantage of them. The mistake most investors make is that they ride things up and they ride things down, and they are married to their own beliefs. And that's normal. That's human nature. But if you're disciplined and do something like this in a regimented fashion, yeah, you are mitigating the risk. You are giving yourself a better chance at walking away from the table with chips in your pocket. That's really the idea. But, Patrick, like I said, I respect and I understand, I acknowledge, and I understand that gold and silver aren't the only places to put your money. And quite frankly, to me, the one thing Bitcoin has done that I was always worried about as a younger guy in this industry is, how are we going to wake people up who are younger and your age and younger? And, I'm 53. I'm on the young end of people who traditionally buy gold and silver. Typically, it's from my age up. Well, what Bitcoin has done is it's woken people up to what fiat currencies are, to the pitfalls of them, to the pitfalls of what deficit spending is. And all of these, the reasons to buy Bitcoin are the same reasons to buy gold and silver. So we should acknowledge and respect both, and don't put all your eggs in one basket. Hedge your bet a little bit. I'm all for that. And I really look forward to having discussions just like this, not only with you and Travis and the rest of and Joe, all the people at the show, but the people in the audience, the people that want to have a debate. And the one thing I can see about the people at this show is that they will have a civil debate. Yeah. And if you never understand other people's viewpoints, you never grow. And that's one thing that when I mean about not being unified anymore, you used to be able to have a civil conversation with people who had differing viewpoints. And now it's like I go to Thanksgiving dinner and my wife says not a damn word this time, not a word about this stuff. And so it's like you have to be afraid about what you say even to your family. And I look forward to going to an event where the people there not only are well-informed and well-read and sophisticated in terms of financial literacy, but also open-minded enough to listen to the other argument and respectful enough to give it actual thought and look at both sides. And that's really, to me, what I get out of going to a show like this is learning myself and having conversations with people to broaden my own horizons. And that really, to me, is what a show in Vegas is all about, aside from going to Vegas, which, everyone loves anyway.
Andy, I know you got to go. I'm going to give you your time back, but I do want to say thank you so much for taking time to come on, tell our listeners about what's going on, especially with BRICS, because I think it's something we're going to need to keep our eye on and follow up on. And I look forward to having and seeing you at the symposium. I'm really excited to go hang out with you guys there.
I am too. And, unfortunately, the information of this meeting, it just started yesterday, today being Wednesday, hasn't filtered out yet.
No, not yet.
By the time we're in Vegas, there'll be lots to talk about. And I'm looking forward to it. So to you, Patrick, and everyone out there, I hope you all stay well, and look forward to picking up where we left off, buddy. You and everyone else out there real soon.
Thanks, Andy. We'll talk again. Thanks, everyone. Talk to you soon.